Hey, I'm Myth. This is part 4 of watching how I draw within, so let's just jump right into it. I'm starting the colors, and how I start is by selecting all of the eyes and all of the space around the characters, so that if you know how to use the selection tools in Paint Tool Sai, basically what I'm doing is making sure that only the characters themselves, that they're the only thing on this layer that can be drawn on. It's something called Select Opacity, or Preserve Opacity. Basically, now that I've got this brown layer down, the only thing that can be drawn is the brown layer itself or clipping layers on top of it, which is what I'm doing with the blue, where that's one layer, and the white, which is another layer. And most of what I'm doing here is going through and clicking on their clothing with the Magic Wand tool that's in Paint Tool Sai, but Magic Wand doesn't get every little crack in the line art. Like, there's little corners in the lines that don't get selected. So what I'm currently doing now is going through and filling in all these tiny little spots where the wrong color would be showing through. I'm also getting like small details that I either couldn't get with Magic Wand or didn't notice beforehand. And usually the first thing I do in coloring is go to the brown layer, which is kind of reserved for all the ponies' coats. And I usually put in the gradients for Dreamweaver's coat first, because it's easier to put in gradient and then fill in wherever it's not supposed to be with solid color, than to do everyone's solid colors and then try and do her gradient and erase and fix everything. So it's just another thing that helps me save time, doing gradients first. During the last few stages, you'll see me just draw in something that I forgot to put in earlier or fix something that didn't look quite right in the line work beforehand. Also, whenever I put in background ponies, if they only appear once, maybe twice, they don't have official reference sheets. I just make up their colors, and if I ever need to draw them again, I'll go back to whatever page they appeared on. Use that as a reference. Speaking of which, when I'm drawing the comic, for the main characters, there's a lot of flipping back and forth between the file of the comic and the files where I keep all of their reference images, so that I can select their coat colors, their main colors. I'll open previous pages to get the references for what colors their clothing are, or what patterns are in their hair, like I'm doing here. I think the coloring has the most detail involved, and yet somehow it goes the quickest for me most of the time. For hair, once again, because Dreamweaver has a gradient, I'm getting that out of the way first, and then coloring it with just the solid lines of her hair squiggles, or whatever you want to call those. And I don't think I've mentioned it yet, the reason I leave all the eyes blank and open like this is because I prefer to draw the eyes underneath the color of the characters, rather than creating these tiny little circles where you have to get all the detail of an eye on top of the image. It's just easier to place the eyes behind the characters for me. And here you can see me using the selection tool again in some places when I don't want to take the chance of color bleeding from one person's hair to the other. I'll just use the selection tool and I can do the color more quickly that way because I know I won't get outside of my lines. Again, this is clothing that you're only going to see once. The pancakes, you're only going to see this once, so I'm kind of going through, drawing it quickly, not putting a whole lot of thought into it, just making something that looks nice. Also, I'm not very experienced at drawing food, so this is kind of, this was experimentation, putting the syrup in there. Now 10 hours have gone by. Pages still aren't done. Coming through, putting in smaller details. This newspaper really should have been left on the background layer. I'm not sure why I put it in the character layer. You can see me flipping back to previous pages now to get all of the girls' clothing colors correct. There's not much to talk about it. It's really just a lot of filling in small details until I decide all the color's done. And again, putting in little fixes. When I do the eyes, I usually take one solid color, put in all the irises just to make sure that they're all facing the correct direction. Then again, I'll go back to the reference sheets, get the actual color their eyes should be, and color them accordingly. Fixing another mistake, I forgot to put gradient in Marina's hair. Anyway, then I will take black and white, and if you use Paint Tool Sai, you know you can just flip back and forth between two colors. So usually I go in, put in pupil, shine, pupil, shine, pupil, shine, just to quickly get it all done so I don't have to go. You'll notice I have to cycle around and around and around the page multiple times when I'm doing the drawing just to get through all these colors. Adding in a few more things that were missing. And now, oh, I forgot. Yeah, also missing the magic. Yeah, it's never too late to update a reference sheet too, if you want to add something to it that you're going to use later, especially like for unicorns magic. Now, word bubbles and thought bubbles, I just put white ovals, stretch them to the size I think they're going to be, put them to 60% opacity because then you can see what is behind them. Make the black words show up nicely and easy to read. Here's something I mentioned on a previous video, just erasing part of the finished character to give the illusion of foreground rather than having to draw the foreground separately in front of everything. It just saves me so much time. Okay, I do a couple more laps, making sure all the last details are in, that I'm not missing anything. Looks good. So I'm going to move on to what I call comic formatting. Basically, I just paste one of the completed pages into the comic border, grab a pre-made number, and put it into place to reflect the current page number. Save it. Do the same thing for the second page. Make sure it's in the right place. The background is brought up to black to make all the lines solid black. Page number goes in place. Then I save both of those accordingly. I'm going to go back to the dialogue I wrote in way at the beginning of sketching. Get that situated on the right side of the screen because I need to pull up another program called Autodesk Sketchbook Pro to type in all the dialogue, which, by the way, this doesn't have autocorrect or central spacing. It's all on me to get that aligned the way I want it to. So type in all the dialogue, I align it the way I want to. I fit it into place where all the text boxes should be, and sometimes I have to do quite a bit of adjusting to get it to look right. So roughly 12 hours of drawing went into making these 2 pages, and to be honest, I picked these ones because they're fairly simple. Most pages take 6 to 8 hours each, but they'll take even longer if you've got a lot of characters, or they're wearing fancy clothing, or there's a lot of dialogue that you have to fit in between them, or if there are a lot of backgrounds that all need to be hand-drawn differently to show all of the stuff that's going on around the characters for certain situations. So that's how I draw within. The last piece of advice I'll leave you with is that if you've been watching these because you're interested in making your own comic, like I've said multiple times, there's a lot of ways to analyze your process and find ways to save time, but absolutely be prepared to invest a lot of time and effort because comics involve so much drawing. I've been working on Within for 5 years, and it's probably going to be another 5 years before it's over.